Imagine walking alone through a silent valley, the wind cold, the air sharp, and the world covered in a blanket of snow. You think you're completely alone until you hear it, a sound so soft, so weak, that it stops your heart, a trembling cry, a desperate call, a plea for help, and then it stepped out, a tiny white leopard cub, its fur sparkling like frost, its legs shaking, its blue eyes filled with fear and hope. It stumbled toward a man wandering the valley, a man who had no idea that this single moment would change his life forever, that the cub wasn't just lost. It was being hunted, and saving it meant stepping into a world of danger, loyalty, survival, and an unbelievable destiny. This is the story of how a helpless white leopard cub begged a human for help, and how an incredible journey began. The valley had always been quiet during winter, but that morning, the silence felt heavier, as if the mountains themselves were holding their breath. Armin, a reserved wildlife trekker, walked slowly across the snow, listening to the soft crunch beneath his boots. He wasn't searching for anything, he was simply escaping the noise of life, but the mountains had other plans. A faint cry sliced through the air, thin, fragile, and filled with desperation. Armin froze. It wasn't the cry of a bird. It wasn't the wind. It sounded baby like. He followed the sound carefully, scanning every shadow. The cry came again, this time closer, weaker, and then he saw it. A tiny ball of white fur huddled beside a half-buried rock. The cub lifted its head weakly, its blue eyes meeting Armin's for a single moment, a moment that felt almost human. It tried to stand, but collapsed immediately. Its ribs showed through its thin coat. Its paws were red from the cold. It hadn't eaten in days. Armin's breath hitched. A white snow leopard cub, the rarest of the rare, a creature many believed to be mythical. The cub looked up at him again, and this time it crawled forward, painfully, slowly, as if gathering every last bit of strength it had left. And then it pressed its tiny head against Armin's boot, begging. Armin knelt down, his heart pounding. The cub let out a small, broken cry, a cry for help. At that moment, Armin didn't think, he acted. He wrapped the cub in his coat, lifted it gently, and whispered, "Don't worry, I've got you now." He had no idea what danger he had just stepped into. Armin rushed toward his wooden cabin deep in the valley. The cub barely moved, only breathing in shallow, frightened gasps. He placed it near the fire, carefully drying its fur and offering warm goat milk through a small cup. At first, the cub resisted, then hunger took over. It drank desperately, shaking with every swallow. Armin watched in awe. He had seen many creatures in the wild, but never one so breathtaking or so vulnerable. But the cub wasn't alone. Tracks outside the cabin revealed something terrifying. Large paw prints circling the cabin, fresh, something or someone was searching for the cub. The next morning, Armin stepped outside and found the truth. Boot prints mixed with paw prints, humans, and a leopard, poachers. White leopards sold for millions on the black market. A cub like this, priceless. The cub wasn't lost. It had escaped. Armin felt a chill, and not from the snow. Someone knew the cub was alive, and they would return. Inside, the cub limped toward him, touching his boot lightly as if sensing his fear. He knelt and whispered, "I'll protect you. I promise." But promises were dangerous in these mountains. Over the next days, the cub gained strength. It learned Armin's scent, his voice, his movements. When he walked, it followed. When he slept, it curled against his coat. When it played, it gently tugged his shoelaces. Tiny growls sounding like laughter. Armin named it Shiro, meaning white dawn. Every day, he fell a little more in love with the creature he had rescued. But the mountains whispered warnings. Shiro wasn't just healing, he was growing. And somewhere out there, a mother leopard searched for her missing cub. One night, Shiro suddenly raised his head. His ears twitched, his body froze. Armin had learned enough to recognize danger through the cub's instincts. He stepped outside. Moonlight washed the snow in silver, and then he saw them. 3 men, dark clothes, rifles, moving silently toward the cabin. The poachers had returned. Armin rushed inside, grabbed Shiro, and extinguished the fire. He held the cub close as shadows crossed the frosted windows. For hours they hid, silently, breathing softly, waiting. The poachers eventually left, but they would return. Shiro's life was no longer safe here. Before sunrise, Armin packed food, blankets, and Shiro's milk. He placed the cub gently inside his backpack, leaving it partly open so the little head could peek out. Their destination, the highest ridge of the valley, a protected zone patrolled by forest rangers. The journey was brutal. Snowstorms, slippery cliffs, frozen winds that stung like needles. Shiro whimpered inside the pack, afraid yet trusting. Armin whispered, "Hold on. Just a little more." But the poachers were already tracking them, and they were getting closer. As they neared the ridge, Shiro suddenly wriggled out of the pack and jumped onto the snow. He wasn't scared, he was excited. And then Armin saw why. A massive white leopard stood on a cliff above them, majestic, powerful, eyes glowing like ice. Shiro cried out joyfully. The mother leapt down with breathtaking grace. She sniffed Armin cautiously, her muscles tense, but then she recognized something. The scent of her cub, safe, protected. She touched her forehead gently against Armin's shoulder, a gesture of gratitude, but danger wasn't far. Gunshots echoed through the valley. Poachers stormed the ridge, rifles raised. The mother leopard roared a sound that shook the mountains. Armin grabbed a rock and threw it, distracting the hunters long enough for Shiro and the mother to escape into the forest. Then he ran. Snow exploded around him as bullets struck the ground. Just when he stumbled, just when he thought it was over, forest rangers appeared behind the trees. The poachers were surrounded within seconds, handcuffed, captured, defeated. The valley finally breathed again. Hours later, Armin found Shiro and his mother resting beside a frozen lake. Shiro ran to him, purring softly, rubbing his head against Armin's hand. The mother leopard watched, calm, respectful. Armin knelt. He knew what this moment meant. Shiro belonged to the wild, to his mother. To the mountains, he hugged the cub one last time. Be strong. He whispered, live free. Shiro licked his hand gently before stepping back. The mother gave Armin one final look, a silent thank you. Then they disappeared into the white forest. Months passed. Winter melted into spring. The valley bloomed again. Armin often returned to the ridge, not expecting anything, just remembering. One morning, while walking along the same cliff where he first saw the mother leopard, he heard it, a soft rustling, a familiar sound. He turned and his heart stopped. Shiro, now bigger, stronger, healthier, a young prince of the mountains. He approached Armin proudly, touching his forehead gently against his arm the same way his mother once had. It was their bond, their language, their story. Shiro didn't stay long. He vanished back into the wild. Free, powerful, beautiful. But Armin knew one thing. He hadn't just saved a cub. He had become part of a legend, and the mountains would never forget the man who answered a cry in the snow.